don't know yet, my name is Andy, and welcome to the ACN Music Mastering Workshop. Uh, who am I? I am pretty much a sound person and also a sound person. Okay. I've done everything from location sound, post audio, ADR, podcast, audiobooks, and of course, recording, mixing, and mastering music. Um, So just a quick rundown on the rules. There's only two real rules. Be nice, don't be a jerk, right? No one likes that. Be courteous. Uh, I will apologize in advance because I swear a lot. So, and I'm gonna try not to swear, but if it slips out, I apologize. And of course, feel free to ask questions and comments. The chat box is there. We want to interact with you guys. It's all about community here. So next, we're gonna talk about the itinerary. Three main things: what, why, and how. What is mastering? Why do we master? And of course, how to master. How to master, there will be two demonstrations, one in Ableton Live and one in Pro Tools, but I really want to point out the fact that you can master in any DAW. Not all DAWs are optimized for mastering, but you can master in any DAW with their stock plugins. Hopefully by the end of this workshop, I'm hoping that you will have the confidence to be able to talk to a mastering engineer with the right terminology, or maybe even, and this is optimistic, but be able to master yourself, or at least, start to. This section is gonna be a bit info heavy, so don't worry if you get lost. Feel free to take notes. I will try to answer as many questions as we go as much as possible. I have timed myself practicing these slides and getting that information out. It shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. So bear with me for like 20 minutes. Moving on to what is mastering. By the most basic definition, mastering is whatever you do to the master channel. So if you apply EQs or compression, or even if you move the fader, you are quote unquote mastering. The why of it is we master so that we can translate your mix to your audience through the end user format. End user formats being streaming, CD or MP3, vinyl, tape, whatever have you. But the main point is to get your audience to hear what you want them to hear and to get that translated well over whatever medium that you are offering them to listen to, right? Each end user format, CDs, streamings, vinyls, they all have their own technical considerations. The ones that we deal with in music mastering is loudness and format. So let's going into deeper of loudness and formats, just the technical considerations of formats. You know what format is. If you have ever worked in a DAW, if you ever worked in like a digital environment, format is the sample rate and the bit depth. If you don't know what those are, this workshop really isn't the time to talk about it, but basically it's just how the sound is digitalized in your environment. And loudness is, sorry, just going through my notes. Loudness is another kind of psychoacoustic, but still kind of measurable factor that we are going throughout the entire workshop. It's kind of a big subject, so I want to take the proper time to explain it all. As you can see, each format has its own different specifications. CDs and MP3s, if you didn't know, MP3s were made specifically to be put on CDs. So that's why their resolution, their fidelity aren't as high. They are 441 kilohertz, that's the sample rate, 16-bit in the bit depth. Loudness peaks at minus 0.2 or minus 0.1 dBFS. If you don't know what a dBFS is, that's all right. It's just, you just need to know that it is a unit of measurement. Of course, streaming, three different services have different standards. Tidal, Spotify, and iTunes all have their own specifications. What you can note is that iTunes does take any resolution, but it doesn't always output that same resolution in fidelity. So just keep that in mind. Now, I know vinyl is making a big comeback, but vinyl is too much of a physical thing and too specialized for me to recommend anyone who doesn't know about mastering to attempt on their own. If you want to press your music to vinyl, please get a professional to do it, and they will not only be able to master properly, but they will also direct you to the manufacturers that will press their vinyls the way that you want it to sound. Yeah, I don't even offer vinyl in my own services. Brian asked, how can digital signal peak over 0 dB? It can by clipping, but that's beside the point. We always want it below 0 dB, depending on the type of dB that you're using. If you want to talk about that more, Brian, you can private message me a bit later. But moving on to how to master. As you can see, in mastering, we have almost the same tools as you would in mixing or in recording. We have EQ, compression, panning. Technically, you can use, and I really want to point this out, I really want to emphasize this fact, you can use the exact same tools you use to record and mix to master. All those tools might not be made with the intentions of mastering, but so what? You can still use those EQs to master, you can still use those EQs to record. You're only limited by your imagination and your sound, and maybe your technical know-how. So if we can use the same tools for mixing as mastering, what's the difference? To explain this to like layman's, I'm not saying you're layman's, I'm saying I think you guys have a little bit more knowledge than the typical layman. But to explain it the simplest way possible, I use the sandwich analogy. To build a sandwich, you need ingredients, right? So that's the recording aspect. You gotta pick your ingredients, you gotta gather them all up, and you gotta figure out what you like. And then mixing is like assembling the sandwich. So we got the bread, we got the pastrami, we got the tomatoes, we got the drums, we got the bass, and we're putting it together in a very specific sequence that we enjoy. Now you can eat the sandwich at the mixing sandwich. You, as the person who is mixing your music, can eat the sandwich at this stage. But if you wanted to give someone else to enjoy the sandwich, you have to plate it, or you got to package it so that it survives the travel to that other person. And that is what mastering is. Mastering is the presentation, the packaging, so that another person can enjoy your mix or enjoy your sandwich. Simply put, TLDR, mixing is shaping the sounds on a micro level, individual instruments, effects, EQ, compression, whatever. Mastering is altering the song as a whole and preparing it for the final consumer. So let's go through some of the considerations that we do when we master. First of all, the creative considerations, color through EQ, energy through dynamics or volume, and soundstage through panning or wideness. Technical considerations are what people get confused about most of the time. We have dithering and loudness. Dithering is very specific to a digital environment. If you don't know what digital dithering is, it's very complicated, and I don't think I have it. I'll need a new workshop, a 1 hour long one, just to explain dithering. But basically, it's just when you have a sound that's digitized, like a waveform, it's actually a million different 4,400 so slices or whatever of information, bits of information. And to get from one slice to another, we have a little bit of sound. That's what dithering is. The deeper that sound, bit depth, the better, more fidelity, the smoother that transition from each slice is. Now, loudness. Loudness and hearing is subjective, right? We all have different ears. Our brains are different. Our eardrums are in different conditions. Our environment is completely different listening-wise. So we perceive loudness in an uneven curve. But we know certain things to be objective. Like sound is just energy being propagated through air. That is just a fact. That is physics. Thus, we know that lower frequencies, which are much bigger, require more energy to complete itself than higher frequencies, which are, much more rapid. In a digital environment, your waveform will be affected by lower frequencies more than higher frequencies. So if you have a waveform and you have like this thumping bass and you got a little bit of like a violin or a chime or anything, and the bass is just blasting and clipping, it's gonna be, your waveform is gonna look bigger than if you have the higher frequency instruments like your chimes or your violin being louder than the bass. It's perceived louder. It's felt, I suppose. And what that means is that when it's translated over to the end user format, the algorithm that end user format might be affected by the perceived loudness of your lower end than your higher end. Which is why we always have people saying, you got to control that low end, you got to mitigate that low end. That's just a very important thing to remember when mastering. Now, as I said before, loudness is a measurable like a measurable thing in a digital environment. The standards that we use today, the standards that you will mostly come across in mastering or in most digital environments is RMS, root mean square, or LUFS, loudness units full scale, which simply put are just units of measurements, numerical values for loudness. If we go back to the end user formats, like the end user format slides, you'll see that each format has its own loudness and has its own standards. It either uses RMS, like in MP3s, or LUFS, as in most digital streaming sites now. Do they translate? You can try to translate them, but they are different. So now that we've covered the basics of the what and the why, let's get to the how of mastering. Rules of mastering. Rules of mastering. Okay? Like every creative endeavor, everything is subjective. There are certain practices in the industry that is considered standard, but again, everything is subjective. These are just some, I'm not going to read them all out, but these are just some lists that, or tips and tricks that will help, that are standard in mastering practices. Like the low end that has to be controlled, as we spoke before, or the high end, such as an example of an MP3. MP3s cut all your frequencies past 16K through psychoacoustic algorithms. What that means is anything past 16K, you're not going to hear, or it's going to fold back, or the MP3 format is going to kind of change it and mix it in a way that you can kind of perceive it. It's not actually there. So that's what we got to take care of when mastering on the high end. There's just a couple of things that, that our mastering engineers are for, or how to master. That being said, what makes a good master? And this is my favorite slide, I'm sorry. As long as it sounds good, like, who cares? Like, as long as the other person that you want to hear your music is hearing your music the way you want it to hear, that's all that's important, right? Like, yeah. The end goal of it is that they hear what you want to hear, what you want them to hear. You do that, it's a good master. Now we're gonna, to prep y'all for the demonstrations, I want to talk about workflows. There's two main workflows that you will see in a mastering session. Either you are mastering in the mixing session itself, which has its own pros and cons, or you are mastering in a new session, a mastering session, affecting only the final waveform. So in a mixing session, if you're mastering on the mastering channel, it gives a pro of it is that you can go back into the mix whenever you want and mix things up and change things on the fly. But that's also a con because, excuse me, it's also a con because like you're gonna keep going back and forth, and that's not always imperative to the creative process, or at least to the technical process. The more common workflow is working with just final bounces, where you can individually keep track of each song, especially if you are doing more than one song, mastering more than one song, say for an EP or an album. That is much more efficient and gives you much more freedom to just go through each track as an album, as the full song in itself, not in the mix. This is a bit of a very biased and controversial view, but that's what I believe. And I think I make some pretty good points about it. some additional resources if you really want to dive more into mastering or mixing or even engineering in itself. Bobcat's Mastering Audio. The man literally wrote the book on mastering audio. Like literally, this is the book that I learned from. It's the book my school gave me. I still have it on my bookshelf. The thing about Bob Katz is he does a new edition of his book every few years to keep up with technologies. So you will have everything from tape all the way to modern streaming in his book. Cannot recommend it more than enough. It is a hard read. It is a very technical read, but it is still worth it. Mixer Man and the Zen and Art of Mixing is a fun book. It's a lot lighter than Bob Katz's Mastering Audio. But what it has advantages is if you're an artist, it will give you the ability or the know-how to interact with an engineer. And if you're an engineer, it'll give you the ability and examples of how to interact with artists. It's particularly bad clients too. So that's always a thing. Pensado's Place, if you don't know Pensado's Place, it is a long-running podcast or talk show turned podcast. And so it's for like people who need to learn through YouTube, who learn through visual aids. It's been running for, I don't know, like 15 years now. Yeah, Mike Pensado is a master in the industry, and he brings on other masters. They talk about techniques, they talk about mixing sessions, they talk about working with super famous artists, Slash, Kiss, Michael Jackson, Aretha Franklin. Like he gets guests from everywhere. And checking it out, always a good thing, no matter what level you are. Before we get back into the demos, reiterate, my name's Andy. You can find me on Instagram by Sound by Lee. Add me on Facebook if you want. Email me, say hi. Visit my website, thesoundbylee.ca, not .com. I'm Canadian. Hey, what's up? and feel free to donate to ACN. There's be a PayPal link posted on the group somewhere, I'm sure. Justin, this wouldn't happen without Justin and ACN for coming up with these and allowing me to be able to share my knowledge with everyone. It's Ellie. You'll find me in the group. Like the host of the event page, you can find me there. But yeah, also maybe if you are in the mood donating, Black Lives Still Matter, Lebanon is the thing. We are very privileged to be working in this industry, and we are standing on the backs of giants who happen to be, Black and very vocal and political. And we as artists, we as artists have a responsibility to use our platform to propagate the proper message, propagate your views, because that's what art is. Elicting an emotion. Sorry, got to clarify that. Yeah, feel free to contact me for my rates as a producer, post audio engineer. If you're working on movies, anyone who's working on movies, that's what I'm doing right now. Mixing, mastering, I even do lessons, or just say hi. I'm always down for a conversation. Now, I want to really hammer this point down. I know I said it multiple times before the meeting, during. You can master it in any DAW. You only really need an EQ, a compressor / limiter, an expander, maximizer, maybe. Like, you can get around that. And metering. The measurement tools that we use as mastering engineers is super important. We have to know what we're listening to, especially if we're in a subpar listening environment, like our bedrooms, not in a professional studio. If you don't have any money, which, let's be honest, like, I don't got money, there is HOPA 4U meter. It's free, it is top of the line, and it is, sorry, trying to copy that to the chat, and it is one of the best meters that you can learn. It does have a little bit of a learning curve, but like YouTube is a thing, and it'll help you set it up. I personally use Isotope products. Isotope products are my bread and butter. Isotope Insights is great. It's $200 though. Not all of us have $200 to spare. I don't know Lean loudness meter, so I have to get back to you on that, David. But yeah, time for the demonstration. As I said before, there will be 2 demonstrations. One, Ableton Live, mastering for MP3 and CD. This is really to emphasize the fact that we can use stock plugins to master. There will be this workflow is more geared towards using a reference track too. and it will talk about some of the nuances that I mentioned before about working for MP3 or CD. And the second demo will be in Pro Tools. It'll be more reflective of my actual workflow. There probably won't be a reference track, and we'll be mastering for streaming, particularly Spotify. We'll talk about this more after my first demo, but I was hoping to do something fun and have one of you send in one of your tracks, and that way we can talk about if this track is ready to master and how to master a random client's track. And so like it's just talk about why and how. I'll talk about that more, so I don't want any questions about that right now, but after the first demo. All right, so let's bring in Ableton Live to get started. As you can see, I have my track set up already. This is the reference track on top here, and this is a mix that I did myself. I know I said that if you're mastering, you shouldn't, if you're mixing, you shouldn't master your own tracks, but you know, this is for demonstration purposes. And for this particular project, I am mastering my own mixes. First thing we got to look at when we pick a reference track is, does it have the same vibe as the track that we're going for? Has the same aesthetic, the same sound composition, the same tonal properties, you know, all of that good stuff. Luckily for me, I was working on a cover, so I just pulled the original and used that as a reference track. Now, what we got to see first is to make sure that it's leveled to our desired level, the reference track. So I have my utility here. I don't know if you can read that, and I have my spectrum up here just for, you know, convenience sake. I'm also going to bring up isotope insights here. Isotope insight is already set to LUF, but we're looking for RMS. So really, it's our peak value here. That's the general rule. This is very quick, fast, and dirty, but just for demonstration purposes, this is what I'm doing. So let's give this a listen, and this is a treat for anyone who's a weeb. So here we go. I guess that's a little distracting. Hands up if for code gaze. Yeah. Yeah. So if you notice that it was peaking about 6 RMS. As you recall, MP3, my target is -1, -2 RMS. So I'm going to use my utility here to bring that up and bring that peak up here. You can read that over here on the insight till it reaches about the loss is much, much higher than what I'd want it for streaming. But that's what we're doing for. We're going for CD MP3, which has different technical specifications than streaming. So now that it's there, I'm going to look at my spectrum here and, you know, just kind of note whatever kind of properties that are coming out at me. So now another note is that I pulled this off of Spotify Premium. So the fidelity is definitely going to be better than an MP3. That's just a side note. Can you not hear me? No? Okay. Well, can you hear me now? Yeah? Yeah, okay. So I'm just gonna talk when the music's not on. Thanks for pointing that out, guys. Okay, so as I was saying, I'm noticing that it's very active in the 100 band. It's very prominent there. And it's very active, pumping even in the 800 to 1K band. Another thing I've noticed is that it has a huge dip at the 19 hertz, 19 kilohertz area. So there's not a lot of activity there. That's good for me because I know that if I'm mastering for MP3, that information won't be lost because it's not there to begin with. Now, just to show you how extreme MP3 affects your sound, this is 9K, right? This is 10K. This is 16K. Everything here, everything past this point will basically be lost. Just for MP3, like the fidelity of MP3s is antiquated. It's just antiquated. It's not good, but people still want to listen to CDs for some reason. People who don't want to have smartphones, I guess. I don't know. Okay, so if I go to my actual track, I'm going to turn all of my plugins off just to let you hear the original sound. You should, Ian. You should feel attacked. Just to hear the original sound. Here is my mix of it. It's not a perfect mix. This isn't a final mix by any means. But we have to notice the staging, the color, but more importantly, the loudness. Loudness is super important. We have to bring it up to our desired loudness. So here we go, and hopefully you guys can notice what I'm noticing if you want to chime in. So it's much quieter than our reference track. Much quieter. What we have to do is we're gonna go back to our meter here. We're gonna bring that up, but not to -2 or -1, because we need headroom to work with. Because if you're boosting any frequencies in your EQ, you're adding more energy, and that will add more amplitude to your meter. So we're gonna start here with my utility, handy dandy utility, bring it to 0, and then we're just gonna slowly up it until I'd want it -6, -5 personally, just so I have a 6 dB of headroom. Yeah, the nuances are gonna get lost. I understand that. Zoom is not. Whenever you stream something, it's always gonna be about your bit rate, and that's always gonna compress your audio to the lowest possible fidelity. Sorry, I just realized I was talking over the music. We noticed that it's actually a bit more than what I want for my headroom, so we're going to turn it down. Utility is not the same as a fader, but that's a different technical issue. Technically it is and it isn't. A fader is for the workflow of mixing and leveling, but utility is kind of just there to help you. It isn't, it isn't. I haven't compared my thoughts to that on yet. Sorry if that's a really shitty answer. But yes, I'm bringing it down, -3 dB. If you don't know, in audio, we do things by 3. 3 is the doubling of the current energy. So it's a lot. So we're gonna bring it down. We're gonna see where I'm peaking at right now. It's about -7, -6. That's where I want it to be. So let's take a look at my chain real quick. This is just a typical, very stereotypical mastering chain. I have this compressor here, but it's actually just using it as a meter. So my meter is set to about -1 point, -1. Let's do -1. So that's, if it goes past that, I know. I have a visual aid in helping me see if I'm going over my desired amplitude, my desired loudness. So I'm gonna turn that on. And now I have my EQ. Now, I don't know if you guys, not all of you guys use Ableton Live, but Ableton Live stock EQ is incredibly powerful. Like, if it had dynamic EQ, that would be my go-to EQ. But you can switch it to stereo mode, you can switch it to left and right individually, and you can switch it to MS. If you're not an audio tech nerd, these words probably don't mean much to you, but to have that in a stock EQ is very impressive. Right now, I'm gonna have it in MS mode, that's mid-side. So what that means is that I can affect the middle of the pan, everything that's centered, separately from the things that information coming from the sides, so the left and right, the far left, the far right. Right now, let's look at my mid here. See my mid here, I already have that cut at 16 kilohertz because I'm prepping it for MP3. It's not an extreme cut because the MP3 algorithm will still kind of retain some of that information, but I'm helping it out so it doesn't like cut too much out or leave too much in, and it'll just sound, the high end won't sound great. You probably won't hear it unless you're on a really, really high end system, but like we are hoping that everyone who listens to your music enjoys it the way that you want them to enjoy it, the entire point of mastering. And then we're gonna go to my side information right here. Okay, so there's a bump at 100, as I noted before during my reference. I don't know if you guys remember that. That was about 5 minutes ago. Moving on to my side information. I have that bump here at 1K800, and then a little bit of lift just on the sides, not in the center information, but on the sides, so that I can get that crispness back, that kind of high-end goodness that MP3 is gonna lose, just a little bit. In mixing, we would bump these EQs 3, 5, 7 dB high, or cut them 3, 5, 7 dB high. Well, Curtis, the EQs on the individual level won't, because, and when we're mastering, remember we're mastering for the entire song. We're not mastering EQs. We're not mixing EQs on individual instruments. So that's the biggest difference. I don't know if that's what you're asking, but yeah, I guess that's the best I can explain it. Where was I? Yeah, so I want to bring back some of that crispness back just on the side information so that it can be translated to MP3 better. Now I have a compressor here just to help out with the loudness. If I don't have this compressor here, it sounds very dull. But once I add that compressor, it's pretty fast compressor with only 10 milliseconds of attack, 30 milliseconds of release. It's really pumping. It's really pumping really hard. But that's just because it's a rock song. I want it to be like really energetic. And it's also, it's just compensating. Now, something that we didn't really talk about is saturation. Oh, bye, Annie. Thanks for coming by. Something we didn't really talk about is saturation. We have two main types of saturation. We have tape saturation and we have digital saturation. Saturation is something that is cultural. It is not a fidelity type factor that we talk about. It is just something that we grew up with, that we enjoy. It's like an SM7B, Everyone says it's the greatest microphone ever. You can use it for everything. That's not it. The fact that we hear it on everything, we are conditioned to enjoy that sound. That's what saturation is. So saturation just adds a little bit more warmth. It kind of fuzzes out the low end and kind of eases into the high end. Again, that helps us with that MP3 stuff. So here's the track with that saturation. don't know if that nuance translates over Zoom, but to me, it's a very big difference. The last thing on my chain is limiters. Limiters so that it doesn't clip. It doesn't go past where I want it to go past. And we have two types. You can either use a regular limiter, or you can use your compressor as a limiter and just brick wall that shit. So you just need your ratio to go to all the way to infinite, and your attack and your release to the fastest it is, and that's it. So yeah, I'm gonna open the floor to any questions right now. So far about what my process is. I'm gonna try to go back and answer as many questions that I missed as possible. Okay. So is utility the same thing as fader? Technically, yes. And also technically, no. Faders are faders, and utility is on a fader channel. So it's something underneath the fader, but functionally, it's the same as a fader. It's also great for stereo imaging, like a pan pot, same thing. Do you want your meter? Wouldn't you want your meter after the EQ in the chain? Yes, you do. That is what my, that you do. But that is what I'm hitting for the compressor. I'm also using that as kind of a makeshift meter. Again, Ableton is not optimized for mastering. It doesn't have real metering plugins. So, and I really wanted to use this demonstration to demonstrate the fact that you can master in any DAW. Sorry for dropping by Annie. So, can you go over what you're listening to when you're setting your compressor? What I'm listening to is my compressor. Because this is a rock song, this is a genre-specific thing. I really want it to feel like it's pumping, especially during the kicks, especially during the punches. So I'm listening to like those moments, those like crispy moments where it's just hitting that peak, and I want to just bring those out and maybe bring the valleys up a little bit more so that it still has more energy. I know these are very subjective terms, but like I'm an artist too. You got to give me a break. Them transients, not always transients, because your bass probably won't have sharp transients, but you still want that bass to be hitting. So you know, it's something that you're just gonna learn through practice. Yeah, so everyone can turn on their microphones, ask me questions freeform. I'm gonna talk about Span. I don't know what Span is. Is that a plugin? I am very VST illiterate. I use things that I like, and maybe if I find stuff, I will use that too. But no, if I don't know what it is, I don't use Span. If someone can, let me know what that is, that'd be really cool. So saving that. Yeah, yeah. Feel free to ask me questions. What I was thinking is, audio spectrum. No, I use Isotope RX7 whenever I'm using spectrum stuff. Again, I'm kind of an Isotope jockey. Isotope sponsor me. So let's talk about like if you guys feel comfortable with me mastering one of your tracks live and how we can do that. Is anyone down for that? Just give me a yes, no, thumbs up.
I'm super down.
Super down. We got Mason. Anyone else?
I'm down, but it's not mixed yet, so I don't know.
Down, but it's not mixed. Okay, that's cool. We can use it as an example of how we can get it ready for a master. So what I want you to do while we're answering questions, like keep bringing questions in, guys, because I'm kind of in the zone right now. Just WeTransfer it. Set the WeTransfer to send us a link, and then just drop it into the chat if you don't mind other people having it. You can PM me in Zoom too if you don't want other people seeing the music. So that's not a big deal. But yeah, we'll see what we can get. Everyone feel free to do that. We can talk about, Mason with the drive link. Damn. All right. Yeah, we can do that too. Get it going. Any other questions while I'm setting this up?
What's the email?
The email? No, just
Yeah.
set it to a link, upload link, and then drop that link.
All right.
All right, so we got Project 12. You mind if we listen to it, Mason?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah? Cool. Cool. you notice you're mastering with headphones. Not recommended, but the setup that I have now so that you guys can hear everything, I need headphones so that I don't get feedback on my own system. But you totally can master on headphones if you need to. Not super recommended, but if you have the proper metering, you can do it. Yeah, just send the WAV file. That's all I need. Actually, preferred WAV file. Curtis is dropping some stuff. Nice, nice.
We used to watch the stars, but now
EDM track. I see you. I see you, Mr. Wong.
I'm staring at the moon. Gave you all I had, but now I'm drinking to watch you go. Let me hold you in my arms. You'll only be a friend.
Okay, yeah, that is totally ready to master. Great mix. The drums could use a little bit more time. In my personal opinion, the drums could be a little cleaner. There's a little bit of noise at the end that I can definitely hear that isn't pleasant to me personally. But yeah, ready to master, definitely. All right, Curtis is sending some stuff. Let's see this. Ooh, a radio edit. Cool. Can we hear it? Are we allowed? Do you mind if we listen to it, Curtis? Is that cool? Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah. Go for it.
It's down tempo dance. I can fuck with it. This technically can be mastered. I would spend a little bit more time on the mix, but that's just my personal thing. Everything seems a little flat to me. Nothing's really standing out. There's like no moments, you know? But definitely ready to master if you want it to be mastered.
So I guess this piggybacks off of my earlier question about how do you know when it's ready to master or move on to the mastering phase versus making tweaks in the mixing phase? Because when you say make it more, it sounds a bit flat. I don't know if that's a mixing or a mastering solution.
That's a mixing issue. If
Okay.
something sounds flat, it means that on the stereo field, everything is on the same level. So even though you're panning left and right, I hear everything at an equal level. No one's taking center stage. That's what I'm saying. That's like, this is just, my subjective opinion. So, take it with a grain of salt. But that's what I hear.
So it's like a mid-side separation issue?
No. It's really an artistic difference for me. Like, personally, I'd like a little more energy to certain things and pulling things back. Like, you don't have to hear everything at the same time all the time. But yeah, if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it later.
All right, sure.
To answer your first question, when you know something is masterable, it's one, loud enough. It's two, the dynamics are perceivable. You can hear the dynamics. You can hear the lows, you can hear the highs, and they're not unintentionally too low and not unintentionally too high. If it's clipping, that's an issue. We don't clip no more. We're in 2020, my guy. Everyone, we're in 2020. Let's do it. No more clipping. Loudness wars are over. I hope that answers your question, Curtis.
Yeah, if you got time, I would love to talk more about like how to make it actionable, because I think I understand your feedback, but what I'm struggling with still is how do I translate that into something actionable?
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that. Feel free to drop me a DM on Facebook or Instagram.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
No worries, man. That's what I'm here for. Okay, so that's downloading. Christine, I'm downloading first. Oh, sorry, I didn't ask if we can listen. Are you okay with everyone listening to it? Yeah. Okay, so we have an example. As Christine says, this is not mixed at all. So we have an example of So I'm just trying to download everyone's tracks as quickly as possible. We have an example of a track that isn't ready to master, which this is an extreme example of a track that's not mixed at all. So everything is way too quiet. It's way below the level that we can work with. It is probably at like -18, -16 dB. It's just hard. Like, we can't do anything with that. At the mixing stage, everything has to be brought up. But if you bring everything up, you might hear things that you don't like. So you really have to focus on the mix on that. Another thing is everything in mono?
It might be. I don't.
Everything's centered? Yeah, so that's another issue. Unless you're specifically mastering for a medium that does only mono sound, like vinyl or I don't know, sound horn or TV, like really old TV, then you'd want like a stereo stage. You'd want things to be panned out. You want things to be spread. Again, this is a very extreme example of a song that hasn't been mixed at all. It hasn't been prepped for mastering at all. Okay, right. So I'm gonna download. I downloaded Andrew's. I'm gonna download David's, and then I'm gonna ask some questions in the chat. I wish I have a glass of water, but you know. So this is David. David, it's okay if everyone listens to your track? Just drop a thumbs down, thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
We are rallied here to thank you.
Oh.
You have given everything. Without you, though, our hearts are torn and our minds.
Oh, it's a very clear mix, and I love your harmony. Before the mixing stage, I'd want it to be a little louder, maybe 3 dBs louder, just from my perception. It does sound a little quiet, but everything is there. Everything is ready. If you want it to be mastered, it can be mastered. Okay, so I downloaded. Ooh, it's getting hard to keep track of. Goodness is Andrew's track, I believe. No, Goodness is David's track. And Andrew's track is this one. Okay, another sign that a track is not ready to be mastered is that it's not in wave format. It is already compressed and thus already technically mastered. So that's something that we didn't talk about, but like, yeah, not to put you on the spot or anything, not to point that out, but yeah, if it's not a wave, if it's not an uncompressed format, like photography, if it's not raw or uncompressed format, it's already technically mastered. And so, like, as much as we can work with it, but it's not ideal. It is like absolutely not ideal to work with in compressed format when you're mastering. Remastering, there are examples of remastering. Say, like, when we are mastering an old song that only came out in vinyl, and when you digitize that, there is exceptions to that, and there are very specific techniques in mastering for that. But that's not what we're talking about today. It's another fascinating topic, but sorry, not sorry. Okay, so we have, I believe this is Andrew's and Christine's track. They are not ready for mastering for very specific reasons. Either they're too quiet, they're not mixed, they're in a compressed format. Those are very good reasons to not master something. To tell your client, listen, bro, I'm sorry, man, but you just got to work on this a little bit more. But yeah, we have 3 tracks, 3 very good tracks that are ready for master. Let's go through some of the questions in the chat. Can't you use utility to bring it up loud enough? Absolutely, you can, especially if you don't want to do that on the fader. Question, loudness. What loudness should we be aiming for the final mix when we're going to master? I go for about -8, -12 to -8, -6 if I want an MP3. That's just my personal preference. I need at least 3 sectors of loudness to work with, just for mastering. Height, width, depth, that's not a question, Ian. Did Will manage to send his WeTransfer? Oh, okay. Follow-up questions to my track, David. So I'm seeing that it's hitting -1 on the master track in Ableton already. How do I bring up the loudness without clipping? Very, very difficult when you have no headroom. The only thing that I can think of is very harsh compression and subtractive EQ. But you really need some headroom to work with ideally. Like without the headroom, you really can't add anything to it. You can only take away. So yeah, that if everyone is submitting tracks, which one did you guys want me to work on? Do I ever do mixing workshops? See, mixing is like not genre specific, but is genre specific. Like there's different principles that you will have to apply in different genres. So if I or anyone else were ever do a mixing workshop, it'd have to be very genre specific. One of the reasons why I wanted to do a mastering workshop is because you can apply it right away to yourself no matter what type of music you do. So yeah, which songs did you guys like? Which song do you think you want to see being mastered on my workflow? We have Project 9212, great name. We have Mixing No, Gallivant, Radio Edit, ACN Mixdown, and we have Goodness. Mason's? Mason was Project, right? The one with the vocals was Goodness. I think that was Andrews or David's.
It's David's.
David, okay. The one with the vocals. They all technically have vocals, but you're talking about the one where the chorus singing and everything. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna do a thumbs up system. So y'all know how to do thumbs up on Zoom, right? So I'm gonna play a song and then we'll thumbs up it. How about that? Sound good? So this is. Okay, moving on. That's 3 for that. And the last one.
Us every favor.
Oh, you guys are too hard. Like it's a tie for all 3 of them. All right. Hey, Justin, pick one.
I already voted, so that's kind of unfair. We can do a rock, paper, scissors with the 3 of them.
All right, someone who hasn't applied, someone who hasn't really talked much. Eddie, you there? The first one? All right, we're gonna do the first one. I'm sorry, guys. If we have some time, we got about half an hour left. If we have some time, I'll try to get to the third one. Okay, so.
I'm gonna hop in here real quick and just like say to everybody here, it sounds like you guys all have like a pretty decent like level of experience. Andy is volunteering this workshop. Obviously, like there's the donation link. But if any of you guys are interested in hosting a workshop on mixing or any kind of music production, anything like that, shoot me a DM on Facebook. I'm one of the admins on ACN, so you can just like shoot me a message. I'd totally be down to set that up for anybody else. Or if Andy wants to do one in the future, he can. But it's up to everybody.
Thumbs up if y'all want me to do another workshop. Oh, y'all are sweet. Okay, so Protools is a little bulky. Tell me if you guys can see everything. As I said before, this one won't have a reference track, and we are aiming to master for Spotify. If you remember, Spotify standard is 48 to 24 kilohertz or 16 bit, and sorry, I'm reading the chat. Excuse me. 48 kilohertz, 16 bit bit depth, 24 bit depth, because I believe it's video standard as well, and it is aiming for -14 LUFS. LUFS. Yeah, that'd be great to do a comparison. I had colors here just in case no one wanted to, send their music over. Excuse that. I know everyone loves Code Geass, but yeah. All right, so I'm gonna drag project 9212 here, which is already a stereo. It's already a stereo file, which is good, right? I'm gonna open the properties here, double check the details of it. So I see it's 24-bit, and it didn't ask me to convert, so I can tell I work with in 48K exclusively because I work with a lot of audio. So then I know that this file is 4824. All right, let's download Mason's master track real quick. Yeah, you can already tell that it's been mastered because it's so much louder, right? Okay, so downloads. We'll use it. We'll use it as a reference. Right away, you can see that there's a huge difference in the waveform. Like one is mastered, one is not mastered. But if I zoom in here, does that look like clipping? Oh, that might be clipping. I'm sorry, bud. But yeah, you are clipping. Dang. That's unfortunate. Don't worry though. We'll. So what clipping is bad? Clipping is distortion. Clipping is foldback, and it's not a pleasant sound. Sometimes you do want artistic levels of clipping, but this is not one of those situations. That's why you're here. That's right. So we're gonna analyze the reference track real quick. Where is it going? My Pro Tools is set to dBFS, not RMS. So this is just a frame of reference for me. Another thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add insight. You guys know how much I love insight, and use that as a measuring tool. So we're gonna go through just probably before the drop to see just where the maximum loudness is.
Can we be a friend?
So it's much louder than what we need. To clarify, what do you say clipping specifically? When a waveform hits past its threshold, which in waveform matters is +1. Okay, waveforms first of all only do 0, +1, -1. This isn't loudness. This is energy in waveform. When a waveform tries to go past +1, it will fold back into a straight line. It will fold back onto itself, and through phase cancellation, create a flat line on top, and that is clipping. That is the distortion that you will hear when something gets too loud.
So
yeah, that's why we're here, Kurt.
Sorry. So supposing I put, let's say, FabFilter limiter on my master bus, and I turn up the input gain, and I see the gain reduction happening. Do you consider that clipping?
Because it's hitting your threshold. It is hitting your brick wall limiter instead of just the natural end of 1 that your DAW will allow. In that, it will still cause the same effect as foldback distortion. And yeah, that's technically clipping as well.
I have
So
a
I think-
similar
Sorry.
question. So
Sure.
the one that I mastered, the way I mastered it, I used soft clipping to get, like, because I just, that's what I did. I used soft clipping. So is that also bad?
Bad is a subjective term. You can use clipping. Clipping is an artistic tool that you should have in your belt. But in this context, it's not what we're looking for, because it's not the sound that you want to be conveyed, right? You're not looking for a distorted sound. At least that's what I'm inferring. But through clipping, you will get kind of that type of sound. Do what sounds good. Exactly, do what sounds good, but also stay true to your intentions, right? Okay, so if we look at my insight real quick, you can see that obviously it's hitting past my limiter, so it's definitely clipping on my meters. And also the LUFS, because again, we are mastering for Spotify, it is much too high at -7. We are aiming for -14. if you guys don't know, the Spotify algorithm will take this number right here as its main measuring as its main measuring tool. So if you are hitting -7 and it wants you to be at -14 recommended, then it will bring whatever your track is averaging down to -14. So it'll be quieter than, say, the next track that your listener is listening to. Okay, thanks, Kylie. Thanks for coming by. Sorry you couldn't stay so long, but catch the recorded thing, and hit me up on Facebook if you'd like. What can we do? I can't do anything with this master because technically it is already mastered. It is a wave though. Wave is great if you're uploading to Spotify because because you still want an uncompressed file to be uploaded to Spotify. You don't want compression on compression, at least in data format. Compression on compression in sound, that's a different story. But I'm tangenting now, excuse me. Okay, so I'm gonna switch Insight over here and listen to the unmastered track and see what we get. I'm just gonna skip to the loudest part.
Be a friend.
Oh, Curtis, you are asking the hard questions. I had a
Sorry, man. Like,
no. It's good. The whole thing, I had a whole thing on the loudness wars that I cut out because I didn't find that it was relevant, and now you're kind of making me regret cutting that part out. But yeah, we do want our track to be as loud as possible but while keeping its integrity. It's not always achieved through compression. What is really underlooked is level staging, sound staging, amplitude staging, volume staging, gain staging. Like, you got to make sure your levels are good right out the gate during your mixing stage so that you can avoid unnecessary clipping. It's a very nuanced thing. It takes a lot of practice, but like everything, things take practice. Ian's asking, where can we learn about algorithms and about audio? Their FAQ, man. They have it plain, black and white. It's right there. You can Google it. If you ever have any questions, Google's the place to go, right? What is Spotify standards? What is Tidal standards? What is MP3 standards? The only thing that I don't recommend Googling is vinyl standards because that's a big mess. Okay, so this track is a little hot. It's hitting about 13 to 14 LUFS at its loudest. What I want to do is I'm going to take just the clip gain. You can also do it here in the fader, but my preference is doing it right on the clip itself. Again, something about gain staging that someone mentioned at some point. I'm just going to bring it down -3 because we work in threes. And we're gonna just measure it again, see if that's where we want it.
Be a friend.
Okay, so I have about 2 LUFS of headroom to work with. That means if I want a little more brightness or if I want a little more bump in my kick, in my bass, then I have that room to work with. So we're gonna close Insights here and I'm gonna bring up Ozone, Isotope. As I said, I'm a bit of an isotope jockey, but thanks, Andrew. Thanks for dropping by. A little bit of an isotope jockey. Usually I try to get a dynamic EQ first thing instead of just an EQ and a compressor. After that, it's a compressor, EQ, then compressor, maximizer, and just to make sure that I'm doing everything okay in Imager. Just so the stage is there. See if there's anything else I would like. No, that's it. Okay, so I'm gonna set mine to RMS here. And we are gonna work in mid-side on here. And so, feel free to chime in whenever you want. Any kind of properties that you might be able to hear. I know Zoom's compression file, compression is a little wonky, but like if you think it's lacking brightness, if you think it's lacking boominess from the kick or lacking a little growl from the bass, let me know. This is a learning environment, right?
Now I'm drinking in an empty room, lightning strikes, and now I'm missing you. My loneliness is all in you. Try to run away, it hurts to know that when we meet again, you'll only be a friend.
So I'm noticing your low end is a lot more active than your high end. We talked about this. A waveform who has higher low end is gonna definitely bring up more LUFS units than if it was lower. That's something that you should watch out when you're mixing. But if we were to do it in the master, which this is something that's not recommended, but sometimes you don't have a choice, I would bring it down about just a shelf, about 2 dB. That's about it. Try to mitigate that on my dynamic, and I want it to hit as hard as possible. So almost brick walling it even, just so I can like have that mitigated and controlled. Over here too, it's a bit kind of oof right there. The waveform will thank me for it. If you look here, like you can tell that you can't really tell, but from experience I can tell that this might be just low end information that we are trying to mitigate. So that might be what my meter was fighting against when it was hitting like -13, -7 when we were looking at your master.
I'm missing you. My loneliness is all
Kick
in you.
is right there.
Try to run away from how I feel, but all my roads lead back to you.
I want it fast.
Let me hold you in my arms one more time before you go.
Okay, so that's all I can really do there. Your high end, just to compensate for the low end, can be also higher. So just to bring that brightness up right here, it's like not even 1 dB. Remember, like 1 dB in mastering is a lot. So we really gotta watch out for our levels. We are not trying to change the color or sound of the song. We are just trying to bring out the best of it for when it gets translated into streaming. So this is my dynamic EQ. This is my dynamic EQ, which is, if you don't know, an EQ and a compressor had a baby, it'd make a dynamic EQ. So I just want to catch those peaks, those like sorry, language. Okay, but in general here, you can see post is a lot more manageable. Like your kick is a lot more manageable now in my second EQ. Your low end could use a little bit more, your high end could use a little bit more though, so I'm going to bump that half a dB. And I noticed something in your 600. This is where most of your information is in the 300, 600. So I really want that part to be controlled and like still clear. So that's really, really important because that's the heart of your song. So I just want just a little bit, not too much. Okay, so your dynamics are actually very solid. Like except for that kick, which is kind of wild, your dynamics are very, very easy to manage. But that kick, you see I have it in mid mode right here. That kick is just fighting to be coming through. This compressor will help me maintain the clarity, but still kind of bring down the energy a little bit, bring down the amplitude a little bit. So it's kicking here. We can hear it kick. We can see it kick. Boom, boom, right there. Boom, 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 there. Just the top end. Ozone's mastering assistant is as good as paid AI mastering. Quote me on that. Is lowering the volume the way to control audio? It is one way to control audio. We can also, but that's all audio is, right? It's either louder or quieter, and then there's the color of it. The only thing I can control is how loud something is and how quiet something is, and that is mixing and mastering. Where it is in the stereo field and how loud it's playing at any given time. That is what my job is. Why did I drop that level? Because I still wanted, I just dropped it maybe, sorry. I just wanted to drop it a little bit so that when I get to the maximizer level, I can have that headspace to work with. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Cool, 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 cool. So I still want to work with that kick a little bit because that kick is still there. Like, so even if I turn off like Ozone right now, that kick is still relatively there, right? But now if I turn it on, it's there, it's more pronounced, but it's less energy. So really, really important to get like your kicks popping, but not popping too hard, right? Okay, so the maximizer is what I'm using to bring it back up to the level that I want it. So I want Ozone back, I want Isotope back. Sorry, I gotta click that, and then I can click that. I want Insight back, and then I'm gonna use Ozone. Sorry, I'm getting my words mixed up. I'm really tired now.
Sorry, I'm a little unfamiliar with Ozone. I have it, but I don't use it often. The dynamics page, is that just a multi-band compressor, basically?
A multi-band compressor. You're
okay,
exact.
got it. Thank you.
The maximizer is an expander. It just makes things louder. That's all it does. And so I want to use my maximizer to bring it back up to the proper level. So we can see in your chorus, we're hitting about -16. So I want it just a little bit more. This is just some tech stuff. You guys can look into it. Ozone is a very powerful machine. It has very different modes, but that's really not important right now. So, no, bring me back to the chorus. Come on, be cool. Just be cool. Why aren't you being cool?
Maybe a friend.
I'm just gonna use my maximizer to bring it back. Back down. So I'm watching my short term, and I'm making note of it because the integrated is just the average of the short term. So the difference between momentary, short term, and integrate is how long those samples are holding, how long Insight is holding that sample. I believe monetary is almost instantaneously. Short term, I think it's 1 to 2 seconds, and integrated is as long as it's playing. So I'm watching my short term just to get an idea of where the loudness sits. What's the difference between dynamic EQ and compressor? The difference really is just in the UI. A dynamic EQ looks like an EQ, but it has compressor features on it over here. Like you have your threshold right here that you can control, you have your attack and your release. A dynamic compressor, multi-band compressor, is kind of the inverse in the UI, where it looks like a compressor and the EQ is up here and you kind of choose your bands to which compress. Does that make sense, Curtis?
Yeah, it does. I think I was just trying to figure out, like, at the heart of what they do is they target specific frequency bands and
yes,
control peaks, right?
Exactly.
Kind of.
You can imagine any compressor as affecting the waveform itself, and you can imagine any EQ as affecting the color or the timbre of the sound.
Got it.
So like even though they are pretty much the same, they're not. And you're gonna hear me say that a lot because it is and it isn't, right?
Yeah, because I always just go by like the amount of gain reduction. That's like the bottom line for me with these kinds of tools. But then I don't really
feels
know
like
how to
a-
use them differently.
It's like a different head on a screwdriver. It feels like.
Exactly.
To me.
No, it's more like
Kind of. Not really.
it's more like you have okay, like your DAW is the drill, right? And the drill has different multifunctional tools on it. Like sometimes you need a wrench, sometimes you need a screwdriver.
Right. I think what's also throwing me off is that they're in different positions in your mastering chain. So it kind of feels like by virtue of that they're targeting different things. But I'm trying to like translate that to, like, how do I generalize that to like different tracks? So
as I said before, EQ always in the mindset of shaping the sound, and dynamics compressors always in the vein of shaping the loudness or how present something is. Well, actually,
that makes sense.
Present's not the right, how loud something is. Quote unquote.
Okay,
Loudness
thanks. That helps a lot, actually. Yeah.
They are basically the same tool, but geared towards different things. They achieve different things because of the way that they're set up.
Great. All right. Thanks.
Okay, what was I doing? I was getting the track up to an appropriate level. Yeah, okay. I still want that chorus to be hitting my peak 14. Fab filter, the $200 suite, great. If you don't want to shell out like $400 for ozone, the Fab filter stuff, amazing stuff. If you have Fruity Loops, they have a Fruity Loops 13 or 20. I think it's 20 now. They have a pretty good.
20.
It's on 20. It has a pretty great dynamic EQ as well. Okay. Oh. So last thing I'm going to check is, thanks, Ruchika. Thanks for coming by. I hope you learned something. If not, I'm sorry. Have a great night. Last thing I'm going to check is the stereo staging. Nice, great. I'm very relieved. Stereo staging is important because it's the way that we perceive in a stereo field. Everything that we listen to nowadays is in stereo. We don't listen to mono anymore. We're not listening to a center source. We have two ears. We listen to two sources at the same time. So we got to make sure that it looks okay. And if it isn't, if it's leaning too far to the left, too far to the right, what can we do about that? All right, no, that spread looks beautiful. Good job, Mason. You have a great ear for panning. Yeah. Looks great. Nothing I can do about it. I wish there was something I could do about it so I can teach everyone, but no, nothing. Your panning is fine. Your stereo stage is fine. So I'm just gonna get rid of that. Now it's technically ready for bounce. The thing is, if you didn't see it, but Pro Tools is clipping. So we can't do that because clipping is, in this case, really bad. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring down just this level because again, this is not the same meter as Insight. It is measuring something different. So I'm just gonna bring it down, hopefully 3 dB and see where I'm at. So it's true peaking at, well, it's peaking on my Pro Tools fader at about -3, true peaking at -7, and getting around -16 to -14 if I let it play longer on my integrated LUFS. If I bounce that, it should be a good enough mix to be able to submit to Spotify. Any questions, guys? I hope that was helpful. Yeah, thanks for coming to the workshop. Again, feel free to donate to ACN so that we can have more of these wonderful workshops and keep propagating information, keep teaching. I ran exactly 6:30. What up? Damn, it was not looking at the time.
Nice.
Any last words?
I do have one question.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I'm not I've never used a maximizer before, so I have no idea what it does. If you could give like a quick and dirty like explanation, that would be great.
Maximizer is just a sophisticated expander. It just makes things louder. It brings the bottom, it brings the waveform up. Just the same way as my clip gain or my fader, it's just bringing the level up with the ability to compress it if it gets too loud and still retains the integrity of the sound that I'm looking for.
So how is it different from a limiter with a gain knob?
It's not. It's just more.
Okay. Okay.
It has more bells and whistles.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it is. Any other questions before we sign off?
Yeah, just as a quick note, I dropped a quick shout out to Andy in the event like page. So if you go in there, you'll be able to see the PayPal link. 75% of the proceeds are going to be going towards Andy, and the other 25% is going to be going towards ACN to fund this Zoom account, which we have to pay for, and then also any future projects and programs that we want to work on. Again, want to leave the door open for any of you guys. If you guys want to connect with me in hosting any future workshops, you guys can do that. Or if you know anybody else who might be interested in doing that in ACN, yeah. Or you could also like support Andy directly and have him master your stuff because he is a professional.
Hey.
Hire him.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for participating. This was a great experience, and if y'all want me back, let Justin know. Just demand me, and we can get another one of these going. Maybe we can go to specific mastering. Maybe we can go to genre-specific mixing. I don't know how feasible it is to do a recording workshop, but we'll see. I also do music production. I also do a little bit of songwriting, not professionally, but if you need any help, let me know. And if you want to chat, you know where my channels are. You know where it is. Justin and ACN are gonna upload the entire lecture and my slides up whenever I send them to him. But yeah, good night, guys. I hope you had a good time. I hope you learned something.
Yeah.
And feel free to critique the shit out of me through my DM.
Yeah, we're cool people. You guys don't need to be afraid. Just hit us up, add us on Facebook.
We are cool people. Everyone I've met on ACN is cool, including Justin.
Thank you, sir.
You can tell he's cool from his RGB lighting.
Yes. I also have a colored keyboard, so you know.
He is a musician.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys.
I mean, if you guys want to hang out and chill, I'm down for that too. But like,
I'm down to chill, man.
This meeting is ending. If y'all really, really, really want, I can master that third song.
Ooh.
But I think the same principles apply no matter what DAW you're using, no matter what genre you're doing. You gotta watch that loudness. You gotta make sure you keep the integrity of the song. That's the important thing. So yeah, what's up, guys? How y'all doing?
Chilling like villains.
Just doings. I can feel that, Robbie. I feel that.
I actually do have a follow-up question, if you don't mind. About
Absolutely. What's up?
So, these streaming platforms want you to target a certain loudness unit, which is normally like around -14 to -16 LUFS, somewhere around that range.
Yeah.
If these streaming services are turning down your loudness, something I noticed is a lot of reference tracks that I'm using that are still modern today are still being mastered really loud to like -4, -5 dBs. Do you happen to know why people are still mastering really loud?
Depends. What are you listening off of?
I mean, just my YouTube, I guess.
YouTube? Okay, YouTube. Of all the streaming services, YouTube's fidelity is the worst in terms of audio. That's not what they're for. That's not what they're about. That's understandable. But I'm not super familiar with YouTube standards because, like, I don't do YouTube because who does YouTube except if you're on video or a YouTuber, right? To answer your question about like the remasters though and your reference tracks, you really got to make sure that you're getting a good source. Really got to make sure that you're listening to it at the appropriate levels, and that it's not being altered more than it has to.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask a quick one?
No, Ken, you cannot ask. Of course, you ask.
All right, see you guys. Good night. So I'm working on an album and I want it to be like one song goes into the next. They sort of fade into each other. Do you have any advice specific to that I should look out for?
Yeah, actually, I did an album like that last year for Frank Song Jr., a fellow ACN member.
Amazing guy.
Yeah, absolutely a wonderful soul. And he had these 3 songs in the album that flowed into each other. The way I did that was really, it is difficult. It is not an easy thing. The way I did that was I had it all, because I was doing an album, I already had them all on one session. And so I mastered them as one song with fade-ins and fade-outs that transitioned into each other. And then I cut them right in the middle, where the fade peaked for each song. And then I separated them that way. It definitely, you're definitely gonna have to use your ear a lot for it, but the more work you put into it, the better the product's gonna be.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, good luck with that. Let us know how it goes. Post on ACN and then flex. Your mic's a little quiet. I'm noticing you're using an SM757.
Yeah, I can turn myself up.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to hear you. Anything else, guys? Anything you want to talk about? Your love lives, your traumas?
Oh no.
Could I get your version of the master so I could do an A/B? I know it's going to be a little dicey because like I could just go turn around and use it. Like, so I don't know if you're comfortable with that.
Like, first one's free.
First one. This is your free trial.
This is my free trial. Yeah.
Just hit me up.
You better give a hefty donation, sir.
For sure.
Hit me up on Facebook and I'll bounce it off for you maybe tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Andy, I swear this is my last question. But regarding loudness, I know LUFS is like the unit of measurement for loudness. Is there one for dynamics?
Dynamics is loudness. Dynamics is just how quickly something becomes quiet and loud. It's more of a music term than it is a technology term, but dynamics is just the softness and loudness something progresses through time. So to answer your question, yes, the same thing that measures loudness is the same thing that measures dynamics.
Okay, because I've heard of crest factor, but I don't hear it enough to have faith that there's like a standard for it.
So crest factor, you're talking about the isotope term crest factor, correct?
I didn't know. I guess I'm not surprised. I've heard people reference it. So I just want to hear more insight about like.
Okay, real quick, just to show you, since we are just powwowing about, crest factor is an isotope specific term. And
Okay.
a term that they invented to describe target EQ curves, and they separated by genre. I'll show you what I mean real quick. After Pro Tools decides to load, and maybe Mason, I don't know if I saved that session, so
it's fine.
We're gonna find out.
Oh, it might have been like a sound on sound article or something like that. But
Yeah, sound on sound definitely rides Isotope Stick as much as I do. Oh, look, I did save it. Hey, cool. Okay, so crest factor. What did I use it for? Fuck, where is it? No, it's not on this. It's on tonal balance. Okay, so crest factor is their tonal balance control tool.
okay.
Right after it loads up. Pop, 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 pop. Okay, so here it is. So there's crest factor here. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So crest factor is basically this EQ curve that they created as your kind of your target EQ. If so, for example, if I'm going for EDM, the EQ changes from if I want to do hip jazz or reggae or anything. Just for reference, not to put Mason on the spot, but we're gonna judge his mix based on this crest factor to see how well it matches up with their profile. So yeah, it's well within.
Nice.
It's well within the parameters of Isotope's crest factor.
Oh boy, my ears work.
And that's really all it is. I'm gonna bounce before I forget.
I always thought crest factor was like a measure of how compressed something was. Or
maybe some other company uses it that way, but as far as is concerned, that's the only one that I know.
Okay.
It feels like you're getting at like you want like a D Lufs over DT if you want to go like calculus.
Yeah,
it feels like that's what you're looking at. But like you have to recognize that that changes with time too, because you go up and then you go back down, right? In loudness.
Hey man, this is Asian Creative Network. No math here.
Hey, this as far as math concerned, I do so much math doing this stuff. Like,
Nobody
wouldn't believe.
I thought music was just learning how to count to 4 over and over again.
No, that's true. That's definitely true.
Okay.
I just.
Oh, look at that. So at your beginning, that bass really kicks up. Yeah, there it is. So this
there it is.
Bouncing this real quick. It's fun to see how it's like compared to the crest factor. But there it is. See how I've really mitigated your kick over here so that it really gets to there.
I thought I wasn't mixing bass heavy anymore, but like turns out I still am. So
it was your kick. Your kick just
like the kick is just pumping like crazy.
All right. Thanks, Grant. Thanks, Chan, for coming. Hope you learned. Oh, they already left.
All good.
But yeah.
I definitely feel like I learned a lot from this though. Like there's just so many things I never even thought about that like you touched upon that made so much sense after like hearing it.
That was the goal. Yeah. I was actually kind of nervous. Like I'm gonna come in here like, oh shit, everyone knows more than me.
Nah, man, you did a great job.
But yeah, I'm glad everyone. I hope everyone learned something from it.
I feel like the technique that I use to do my own master is like really dated because I know in like early 2000s EDM was like soft clipped. So like
yeah. We don't talk about the early.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore. Yeah.
The loudness wars, man.
Yeah.
Like soft clipping. Okay, so little history lesson on the loudness war and soft clipping. Everything was in MP3s, right? In MP3s, they had to be at -1, -2. But so how do you make your song more noticeable than the last guy's song without getting louder? You invent techniques to get louder, and more techniques were developed, like soft clipping, hard clipping, using foldback distortion to achieve that. And by the time we got to streaming, the advent of streaming and high fidelity, it was like I kind of missed dynamics. Like shit. And so right now we are kind of in a renaissance of dynamics, and I'm loving it. I am all for dynamics. I have a classical background, so like whenever you're talking about dynamic, musicality, and like I'm all for that.
You have a classical background. That's actually perfect because I wanted to know how we can apply these principles to mixing like more traditional instruments? Because I don't work with like electronic stuff. I work like I also have a classical background, and I want to know like you know it's harder for me to kind of like visualize like it in practice when like working when like all the examples were done through like electronic stuff. So I'm just like, I guess, what are your thoughts like on translating it?
Translating the skills taught from electronic music to mixing in a classical setting, in
Yeah.
acoustic. When we talk about engineering, at least in an academic sense, we always talk about electrical versus acoustic, electrical, acousmatic. But in the end, the principles are pretty much the same. You want to mold each sound so that they fit together with other sounds. You want to place them properly. There's three things. It really boils down to three things when it comes to production. It comes to tone, it comes to loudness and dynamics, and it comes to panning and position. So whenever I'm mixing, I always imagine that there's a stage in front of me, and I place either the sound or the musicians or whatever in the places that I want them, and that if you visualize it like a stage, panning is how far left and right they are, and faders, like how loud they are, is how far back or how far forward they are. And so it's the same no matter what environment you're on, because I've also done classical recordings. That's actually like the first two things: jazz recordings, band recordings. Now, if you're looking for material that you can use when you're doing classical stuff, bands, like rock bands, those skills are very, very translatable to classical orchestras, and ensembles, trios, all of that, because it's the same principle.
Yeah, because when I learned mixing, I learned like in a classical sense, and so I was taught like, for the loudness, would be like the depth, how like you were describing, like the seeing it, and so like there's the width with the pan. That's why I said earlier like height, width, depth, like the width being the panning, the height being the frequency, and the depth being the loudness.
I don't think frequency is the right term for height. Frequency is it's the music. Frequency is the sound. Height, I envision as the room, the reverb. So that's another thing that I envision.
Yeah, because the reason I was taught, like at least the reasoning behind like the person who taught me, my teacher who taught me like height as frequency, is that you want all the different frequency ranges to have like their own space to breathe, and so you want to like kind of like distinguish them.
We're talking about two different things though. I'm talking about positioning of each instrument. You're talking about where those instruments take place in the spectrum, in the frequency spectrum, which are two things. In the frequency spectrum, it's different because high frequencies, low frequencies, it's like how I was talking about with Mason's bass. Like it's too much, it's taking too much space in the low frequency, so we have to bring that back down. Like you can have multiple things in the same frequency band. Like I can have my violin, I can have my flute, I can have my guitar, I can have my voice in the 300 to 800 band. That's too much. But what I was talking about earlier was where they're placed on the sound stage, like a physical, imaginary phantom stage, if you will. What we're talking about is slightly different things, but they are related, just not in the way that I think you're envisioning.
Okay.
All right, I actually had a question for you in terms of like, I guess kind of relating to that. So like I could see that you use like a couple of like I would say like layman's terms to describe like musical concepts, like the things that you're hearing in terms of like when you're describing a sound, like it's a crisp sound, it's a punchy sound, it's like those kind of things. I was I guess wondering from like a sound engineer's perspective, like what are the, I guess, like descriptor words that you're looking for when you're listening to a track?
Each frequency has a very particular, each frequency band has a very particular kind of principle to it, and has a particular, word attached to it in the engineering world. It's kind of a cultural thing, and you kind of just learn it as you consume more content regarding the subject. Like crispness, punchiness. Crispness is really, the technical term is, crispness is the higher sound that you get in the 800 to 10,000, not 800, sorry, 8,000 to 10,000 range. And I'm really hearing that 8,000, 10,000 range very prominently. That's crispness. Punchiness is I'm hearing that kick or that snare at the 400 to 200 to 600 range. Like there is a certain technical connotation to the word, and there are people that have taken the time to decode that and bring it back down to the technical level. But yeah, it's purely a cultural thing.
Yeah, because I use words like that to like describe sounds, but I don't think I'm using it like in the engineering sense of the word. So like hearing you talk about like specific sounds, like
I was talking to a friend, and she had a client, a rapper, who she was doing a mix for, and he was like, I want more saturation. But the thing is, he's a photographer, so his idea of saturation is probably different than the audio term saturation. One of my ideas was like to create a cross-disciplinary dictionary, because we use a lot of the same words, and maybe that way that'll help the translation.
That would be cool, actually. I would, I'd be interested to see that, like a dictionary for creatives.
Yeah, like I don't know, it's something I'm musing about. Sorry, Ian, you had a question?
And I'm still trying to like roll those ideas around in my head.
Okay. Here's my visualization. Okay, whenever I'm talking about frequency, I always imagine an EQ graph. And whenever I'm talking about placement or panning or loudness, I'm imagining a stage. That's it.
Okay, then I'm thinking about this way too hard.
A little bit. I mean, things are always simpler than they are, right?
Yeah. And then, and so then in regards to the mastering aspect, it's just all just exactly the same as what we did today with just like electronic, just
exactly the same. Like you're trying to translate your mix, what you want people to hear, through the medium, because it is being transformed, and have them hear it the way you want them to hear it. Because if you on your computer, it's going to sound different than when you put it on a CD. So you want that translation as minimal as possible, so that they get the truest experience that you want them to have.
I think it might help, like Ian, like what are the usual like groups of instruments that you work with in terms of like any tracks that you're working on?
It's like, it's genre specific. Like if I'm working an EDM track, it's different than if I'm working a classical ensemble.
Oh no, I was asking Ian so that we could get like an understanding of like the types of instruments that he's working with.
I work with a lot of voices, like choir, a cappella, stuff like that, some piano.
Do you know what a spectrum is? Do you know what like a frequency spectrum looks like?
Yeah.
Like it's not an EQ graph. It's like a spectrogram.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little more advanced to conceptualize, but a spectrogram is how I view what you imagine, what you were describing as width, height, and depth. So a spectrogram measures frequency, time, and amplitude, right?
Yeah.
Frequencies are on the y-axis, time is on the x-axis, and loudness or amplitude is on the z-axis.
Z. Oh no, Canadians.
Wow. Listen. COVID. Trump.
That's true. I can't say anything. Ian's in LA, I'm in New York, so.
Yeah, a great thing to practice if you want to just analyze your stuff. Isotope RX7, I think they have a free version or a version that's like $20. If you want to just like throw in some of your mixes and kind of just figure out what's going on the spectrogram, it's a great way to learn.
Okay.
not to ride ice dick anymore.
Because like I've always thought spectralist music was really like fascinating, but I don't really know a lot of it. So I think that would also be help me be more invested in just spectralism as well.
Yeah. The things that you can do playing around with just the spectrum is really fascinating. Just phase wise, just a lot of the pieces that I worked with when I was going to school, because I didn't go to an engineering school, I went to an art school, a sound-based art school.
Where did you go?
Montreal University called Concordia University. I trained under, who did I train under? Oh my God, Kevin Austin. Excuse me, Kevin Austin, who is if you do any electroacoustic work, you will know the name Kevin Austin. And he's a very eccentric man, but he is an amazing teacher. And so, like, the work that we did was very spectral. It wasn't tonal. It wasn't time-based. I mean, technically it was time-based because all sound is time-based. But it was very conceptually spectrum. Like, the first thing we learned to do was learn how to read a spectrogram.
That's such a different like medium of music that like I do not have like a firm understanding of. That's so interesting though.
Like, why would you? It's such a weird specific thing. But yeah, I use this. It's weird because I use the same tools a lot of people do, like tongue X-rays and spectrograms are like, what? Why do you do that? Music? What do you use it for?
Dang, man, that's crazy.
I hope that helped out, Ian.
Yeah. No, it'll help me to kind of just approach my mixes from, because I've never thought about approaching it from more of like with a spectral graph rather than just like the traditional.
Oh, no, don't mix with the spectrogram.
Not mixing it, but like analyzing, yeah, with the spectral graph rather than with like the more traditional
EQ graphs and such.
Yeah, with the more traditional graphs. Yeah, that's interesting. I want to try that. You said RX-7 has that?
RX-7, there are free ones. I just don't remember the names of the free ones. But Isotope RX-7 is what I use for
Voxangle
pretty much everything.
Is one, I think. Also, you can get RX elements, RX-7 elements for free from Plugin Boutique with any purchase right now.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the only basic model of it.
Yeah, Andy, Ian is one of the server mods for Michelangelo's Quarantine. That's how I know him.
You know Mikey?
Yeah. We actually had hot pot together yesterday.
Oh shit! Yeah, tell him I say hi. I miss that dude. Big, lovable, giant teddy bear.
Yeah, Justin, we finally got Felicia out of her house.
Oh man. Nice. Man. I'll probably see you in there later tonight.
All right, guys. I'm gonna sign off. Thank you again for coming by, Justin. We should talk more. I miss you.
Yeah, no, definitely, dude. Honestly, this was awesome. You're outside of just like the content of the workshop, which in and of itself was amazing. You know, like I it's good to see you, man. And like, listen.
Man, I'm very disappointed in your halal. Like,
whoa, dude! Our New York halal, New York street food is the best street food in the world.
I brought John up for Lebanese food up when he came up here, and he's saying it's better than your halal. So you know what? Step it up.
You can treat me next time I come up.
Definitely.
Sounds good. All right, we'll keep in touch. Take care, guys. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Andy, for hosting this workshop.
Yeah, hope you
learned
something.
All right, peace out, y'all.